I am Amy Lasik with Kirkwood Community College, and I'm delighted to be here today with three experts in the area of automation and robotics. This is the second in a series of webinars hosted by Iowa's community colleges regarding Industry 4.0. And today, like I mentioned, we'll be talking about automation and robotics and the role it has in manufacturing today in Iowa. So I want to get started first by having each of our panelists introduce themselves and talk a little bit about the area that they represent. So Wade, if you don't mind getting us kicked off, Wade is our Director of Operations with World Class Industries. So Wade, do you want to talk a little bit about your role at World Class and maybe a little bit about World Class, because we have folks all across Iowa joining us today.
Yes, so again, Director of Operations, I support 4 of our 8 facilities that we have, and specifically support our product realization, which is basically our engineering department. Our journey with automation is less about robotics and a little bit more about 4.0. And we've been in it approximately, I don't know, 12 to 15 years, somewhere around in there.
Great, thanks, Wade. John, with Intolerance, do you want to introduce yourself and talk a little bit about Intolerance?
Sure. Good morning, everybody. John Renning from Intolerance. I'm the Chief Operating Officer here. Intolerance is a build-to-print contract manufacturer. So we're basically CNC machines. So we have Swiss turn and vertical and horizontal milling. And we serve primarily the aerospace and defense market, fully ITAR certified, AS9100 and NADCAP. So we do some special processes here as well. The important thing to remember as we go through this is that Intolerance is a high mix, low volume company, so we can make the automation work for us. And we really hit it in kind of the automated role, robotics, as well as kind of the 4.0 as far as data analytics, as well as the ERP platforms.
Great, thank you, John. And we also have Eric Foreman joining us. Eric is the Education and Communication Director for SMRP for Northeast Iowa. Eric, can you explain what that means and your role with that and your experience?
Good morning. Thanks for joining us this morning. So Education Communication Director for SMRP, it's a Society for Maintenance and Reliability Professionals here in our chapter, Nebraska and Iowa. So I do a lot with education, technical school outreach between the society, which focused around promoting and developing best practices in maintenance and reliability. And I do a lot with the scholarship development program, speaking at community colleges, developing internship programs, etc. Professionally, I spent about 10 years in automation and process control, electrical engineering areas, working with Allen Bradley platforms, Siemens platforms, robotics, etc. Recently moved into, over the last 3-4 years, moved into more of a personnel development role, technical training, and electrical standards, mechanical standards, best practices, processes, etc.
Great, thank you. Thank you all for taking time to introduce yourselves and talk a little bit about the areas that you represent. I think, John, we'll start with you. If you could talk a little bit about how Intolerance is currently utilizing robotics or automation, and what efficiencies have you seen so far?
Sure. We use robotics on the floor mainly to create a environment, I guess, of highest best use for employees. So we have about 50 employees, average tenures around 25 years or so. So we have very experienced. Our model is that we have our machinist programs set up and run parts. So they're very experienced, very into owning their product. The run and the put and take of the operations is not the most glamorous or the most fun. Neither is it the best use for our employees with all that experience. So the way we've used automation is to bring robots in to do kind of the mundane tasks of putting and taking the parts out. So we looked at different solutions, like again, I said low volume, high mix. So we have a lot of changeovers, a lot of setups, things like that. So it was very important for us to be able to bring in automation that we could have our people change over very quickly. So we started out really in an easier platform of just going to manufacturers. We use Mazak a lot of one and done technology automation wise. So instead of using a single operation lathe where you have to do multiple different operations to complete a part, we started to turn to automation with one and done operations. So, bar feed comes through and basically a finished part comes off and we're done with it. So we started to shift towards that. That was our first part of it. And there's some little robots inside the machine. So I guess that was our first introduction to robots, but you can't really see them just because it's an offloader type thing. And then we started to look at, as we looked at some jobs that we were passing on or not competitive on, we looked at ways that we could be competitive. We partnered with a local company in Cascade, Iowa, that works out of Eastern Iowa Machine, and looked at their Halter Robotics. A very simple changeover. It was just taking things out of a stacker, putting it in a machine, machining it, and taking off the raw parts and putting it back. So we worked with them. We were the first integration of a Mazak vertical machine with their Halter Robotics stacking. And it was, the PLCs connected really quick, which surprised us. It was a bit of a risk, but everything worked great. The job that we actually made it for fell through, but within a couple of days, we had multiple jobs that we found a home for. And instead of doing, 10 in the past, we used to do, if we got an order for say 100 for over a year, we would do 10 at a time or 20 at a time, just because we didn't have the ability to do as many. And with the robots stacking and putting and taking in off hours, we were able to run more. So better efficiencies, less setups. So instead of setting up 10 times for 100 parts, we set up once for 100 parts. They were done overnight, and the next day, we were able to, ship them out to either an outside service or process them within. So we got the robots to solve a problem. And solve a specific customer requirement. That customer requirement changed, and we adapted them to fit more of our market. So the hard part about I get this is if you don't have the right people to do the automation, it's very tough. We are lucky just to we have great people in all these areas. As far as robotics, the multi-place one and done machines that really take it to the next level. And so they own their cells. They helped us build the cells, which is really important. So the CNC machinist who's on our robot stackers actually spec'd out the machines and built them with us. So at the end of the day, if they didn't work, we could blame him a little bit too. But he had a high degree of ownership. So it was a lot of fun. We built a lot of things off of that. Being a CNC manufacturing shop, the fingers of the robot, we can manufacture different cool fingers to put on there to do different parts, things like that. So once we got it in and we knew what it was and started to learn more about it, we could apply it to many different things. So sometimes you're just scared because it's a big dollar amount when you put it, we have a great owner. He kind of trusts us and he says, hey, I want to go do this stuff. But sometimes you just have to say, hey, let's go do it and we'll figure it out. And so you make the investment in the product. Maybe the ROI isn't exactly what you want right up front, but you learn from it. And the ROI is that your employees learn from it overall, and then they grow with it and you adapt it. So we've found so many more uses for it. Our payback was essentially probably a year for it. We estimated about 1.5 to 2 years, and the payback was actually a lot less. And then we trained people on how to run run the cells as well. And then we kind of moved out to some more expensive things, multi-pallet pools, things that are more in our industry. We felt more and more comfortable with that. We're looking at another cell to grow on what we have, just because we have the capacity now. So you kind of just start small. We did that kind of crawl, walk, run approach to it, and really just brought it in, learned a lot from it. And then now we're adding different pieces as we go. So it's been a lot of fun. It's helped us a lot. It's given our employees something new and exciting to learn about. They don't mind the automation in. It's not like it's taking their jobs. We're a profit sharing company. So the robots don't take a whole lot of profit. They don't take bathroom breaks, lunch breaks. They don't eat food at our parties. So it's, their contribution is mainly to the bottom line, which is really nice. And our employees see that as well.
That's great, John. It was really interesting to hear the journey that you went through too. And that, really it started with trying to respond to one customer, but then the flexibility of it really was a near benefit. and allowing your employees to really learn from it too and grow through the use of the robotics and automation. That's fantastic.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. My wife, and who Wade knows too, is she used to get mad at me because when we first got the robots in, we have a camera on them. And so I used to watch them at night before we went to sleep and would see like, that's pretty cool, but I show my kids and they got bored with it after a little while, but it's pretty neat.
That's great. Wade, I'd like you to talk a little bit about the automation that you're seeing at World Class Industries and the same sort of thing. What sort of benefits and efficiencies are you seeing?
Yeah, so a little bit different than in Intolerance. We're actually like assembly manufacturing. We provide basically sub-assemblies and assemblies to large OEMs and actually small to medium size as well. Some of our bigger pieces is we have integrated procurement. We're getting assembly floor, a lot of assembly floor data now. We can customize our order from fulfillment, and then lots of projects that we would have coming in, which we need a lot of data for. So I would say approximately about 12 years ago, we applied PLC and sensor technology to our fixtures. So most of our assemblies are built on an actual fixture, which is made in our engineering department. We make all of those in-house, and we integrate them as well. About 7 years ago, we started installing vision system technology as well on those fixtures. Not every one of them, but many. About 4 years ago, we also took on a large project from one of our bigger OEMs that was using like smart press technology. We were getting the readings off of the pressing operations. 2 years ago, we did a Industry 4.0 assessment, which was very good, and really kind of centered us on what do we need to do kind of going forward in the next however many years. And then another thing of significance is we installed a learning lab about a year ago to bring new technologies in and actually test them to understand their capabilities before we put them in use on our floor. John's right. Is that sometimes the ROI can be a little bit elusive, if you will, but the lab has helped us. Things that we would see, quality was one of our bigger pieces. 12 years ago when we were going after the PLC technology and sensors and applying those to our fixtures, we really wanted to increase our quality results and have done that, and have received many customer supplier awards for that. The other piece I would say that's pretty significant would be the line event data system. So within our work cells, we've been probably about 3 years using a system called Tulip, and it provides us data that we're getting off of those fixtures, and then also has virtual work instructions. That's very significant. We can bring new employees in and have them very proficient within a matter of days, whereas before it was probably weeks, maybe even months, to gain proficiency within those work cells. A little bit, we have a very customizable ERP system as well, and can we get that's another piece. We getting data from our work cells to actually feed back into our ERP system, which helps us with serialization. We also have sequencing that we do right to those OEM production lines, and hooking all that technology up has been a bit of a journey, but works very well and is a competitive advantage for us.
Great. Thank you, Wade. I love that concept of having that learning lab as an opportunity to kind of put your toe in the water and try, because
Yeah.
it can be scary to add some of these new things to a plant
Yeah.
floor. So I think that's a great concept.
Yeah, and we have just a little bit about that. We have it all foot of the bill for that. We've used the vendors and the suppliers of that technology, created relationships with them. Some of them have provided us with some of their technology to be utilized in there at very competitive rates. And so it's not just all on our dime, it's just creating a lot of partnerships with the intent to actually test and understand those technologies before we have to use them.
That's great. And I think that highlights an important part about the partnerships with the vendors as you're moving on to new things. And Eric, I'm sure in your experience, as you've been in the industry and have worked with a lot of folks like John and Wade, you've probably seen a lot of those collaborations as well. So what observations have you had related to implementing automation and robotics, and what have you seen from the folks that you've worked with?
Yeah, first I want to say I absolutely love the way that John and Wade have implemented technology. One of the problems you see is companies viewing technology, whether it's Industry 4.0, automation, advanced analytics, predictive maintenance technologies, kind of as a silver bullet. And in a lot of instances, these technologies are being sold that way. But when you step back and you really look at trying to understand first where your people are, where your processes are, and then trying to find how technology and advanced analytical systems can augment, where you are and kind of meet in the middle and grow. And I love the way that you guys have done that. Some of the things that I've seen, John talked about dipping your toes in the water first. Trying to find small pilot programs you can implement. You can work to expose your people in training them and in the technology to these technologies. If you try to take on a plant-wide approach, a lot of times you're going to lose a lot of buy-in. You're going to scare people. You're going to intimidate people, and you're going to lose your team. So taking this kind of approach, really focusing on the development of your team is huge. And those are the things that I've seen as being successful in my experience. And I've also seen, on the wide scale, where applications have failed for not taking those things into account, where companies don't necessarily understand their processes or the way the processes tie together. They don't understand their efficiencies and inefficiencies of those systems. They're just looking for a system to solve all of their problems. So stepping back and approaching it from that angle is huge. And I applaud you guys for doing that, because I've seen a lot of application. Whether it's when we talk about technology, whether it's automation, converting relay logic and control systems to PLC systems to give you that, enunciation of your problem. Robotics to increase efficiency, safety, exposure, effectiveness, etc., or predictive maintenance systems and analytical systems that enhance awareness and senses of what's going on with your systems. Yeah,
that's good. Each of you mentioned through your descriptions on automation and robotics and how it's worked within different companies that you've been a part of. You mentioned people. And a lot of times when people think about making a big change within their companies, they think automatically about the barriers or hesitations. And I imagine people is one thing that you have to think of. But I'd like to throw a question out there for each of you about what sort of barriers, what are some of the barriers or hesitations that you've encountered or seen related to implementation of automation or robotics within your companies, whether it be people or other things? And anybody that wants to jump in on that one.
I can take that real quick. So I just wanted to end up too on just kind of that payback. So when I started here about 6 years ago and started to implement things, we had, we're a relatively small company. So we had about 45, 46 employees. Our revenue was X. 6 years later, We have about 45, 46 employees, and our revenue is 2x. And that's really due to automation. But back to your point with good people, we partner with Kirkwood quite a bit. And we bring in some pretty good folks. We have 2 kids that came in here, and I'll say kids then, grown young men now, but they've been with us for about 3 years. And the thing that they saw when they came in here is it's not just like a dirty shop where you kind of think of CNC machining and things like that. In the era of technology and kind of to the new generation, it really attracts that crowd. And we had a couple, 3 or 4 kids come through the Kirkwood program with the local schools as well that just came through, and we got some amazing feedback from them too, is that, wow, this stuff is pretty cool. And the people that run these machines are so excited about it because they're able to apply it. It's not just, like hammering a piece of metal or something like that. It's truly designing things on a computer through CAD design and modeling, seeing how that translates over to a machine, and then building it on the machine, and then letting the robot do the stuff that nobody wants to do, right? And so that's what our 2 students from Kirkwood are doing now here with us. They're in their 20s and they're early 20s, and they're running machines that are $1 million, $1.5 million, and doing great things with it. And that they see that, so it's an attractiveness, and it brings in really the type of educated workforce that you really want to multiply and get better too. So I think it helps attract people and good people, and it helps retain the very experienced folks as well, because they don't have to lift things anymore. They don't have to do all that back and forth type of stuff. It's more of using their mind, using their best use of their technology or their experiences to help the company.
Thank you. Wade or Eric, do you want to jump in on that one?
Yeah, I probably very similar as John's stating. A couple as far as like barriers. I think when you're going to introduce the technology, I think it's important to get the employees on board. And I want to say on board is what's in it for them, how is it going to help them, and how is it going to help us as a business. So sometimes I think we can move those technical solutions fairly quickly into our shop floor, and I think it's important that we slow down a little bit and take the time to have those conversations and discussions, and really show them from A to Z, hey, here's the technology, and why are we choosing to implement it, and how does it help our business, and really, to John's point, how does it help them? I think that's one. I think 2, I think, how do you get started? I think if at times if we saddle it with one person and says, hey, you're the person that's supposed to just bring this in and make this all happen, sometimes those are tough, because then it's all owned within one single person, and there's maybe people acclimating to it and actually using the technology can be difficult. So we really work to be very collaborative, as it's not one single person saying, hey, we're going to bring this technology in and do this with it. It's actually getting kind of a spectrum across the organization and understanding the technology first, which helps us, move down the path much more quickly and gain effectiveness.
Great, thank you, Wade.
Yeah, I think it's very important to reduce that intimidation factor and frame it as an opportunity. Whether intimidated by potentially losing their job by an efficiency gain. I think John and most manufacturers that implement technology, they aren't doing it for the purpose of reducing headcount. They're looking to improve margins and efficiency and safety, doing the jobs that people don't want to do. And then also looking at it as a development opportunity. You're developing high-skilled jobs within your staff. We can make and manufacture robots that can build cars, but we don't have robots that can operate robots or fix robots. So the need over the next 5 to 10 years to develop these high-skilled jobs coming out of technical colleges and amongst our current workforce is going to be huge. It's going to be a really exciting time. And yeah, it's fun to be a part of.
Great. We did have a question come in from a viewer. Are there specific knowledge and skills you would like to see an incoming employee to have in regards to robotics or automation?
I think the troubleshooting process, understanding the foundational process that the robot is augmenting or improving, and then how things feed in and out of that. So having a good process framework for both troubleshooting and your production process, very important.
For us is, basic skills like basic math skills or things like that. But for the most part, it's just the intangibles, right? It's the motivation. It's showing up for work on time, being excited, being motivated, being ready to come to work and, and get things done. We have the, I guess, opportunity here is that we have a lot of experienced machinists, and we have carpenters who are machinists, we have cooks that are machinists, we have, it doesn't matter if you want to come to work and you have some basis of knowledge. Of course it helps, like Kirkwood really helps develop like a baseline of knowledge. It's like when I came out of school as an engineer, well, I wasn't really an engineer. I was telling them earlier, you come out and you don't design the space shuttle, right? When you come out of school, right? You just come out and then you have these people tell you like, well, college is great, but here's what we actually have to do in the real world. So, and I couldn't even be an engineer in the real world, but it's really that motivation just to come and learn. And with that, you can pretty much, teach them anything. So I wouldn't say there's really a baseline other than the intangibles. And that's what we really like to see right now is just that excitement. I have a lot of passion for it, and it's a lot of fun to come to work every day here. I think the culture, like Wade was talking about too, is the culture is a big deal. You can't just have one person do it. It's just got to be almost like contagious throughout. So they see automation in one area and they're like, hey, can I do this over here? And you're like, yeah, it sounds like a good idea, let's go try it, if it makes sense, obviously, but it's very contagious within our company.
Yeah, very similar to what John's saying is people that are inquisitive and persistent to understand and I want to say make things work as you get it in. That I've been able to witness in the 10 years that I've been here, I don't think we've brought anything in on the production floor, flipped the switch and it took off, and much of that is usually it's the technology and acclimating it within our processes. And usually those that are very inquisitive about it and really want to understand it deeply, as well as persistent to make it work. That's where we've seen the most success with our folks.
Great.
Yeah, to expand a little bit on that. I spent 10 years in automation and control as a programmer. I didn't write a single program from scratch. It was taking existing programs and either adding to make it suit our needs, deleting, developing, enhancing. But being able to dig in and be excited to make things better is huge.
That's great. Well, we have just 1 minute left, so I want to go around, and I know we have a lot of manufacturers from across the states, small manufacturers to large manufacturers. And if somebody's on here and they haven't taken the leap to do automation or robotics and they're thinking about it, what piece of advice would you have for them? John, let's start with you.
All right. For us, it's very like when we looked at data analytics or we looked at robots, we had to see it in action. So we went to Eastern Iowa Machine and we saw it in action. I would really, for people, I would say go see it and see how other people use it, and then that helps you, believe it's real and then implement it. So I'd invite people to come by Intolerance. I'm not too worried about competitive advantage or anything like that, but if you like to come by and see how we implement it, you guys can, gals can, through Amy, just let me know and we'll set up a tour and you can come through Intolerance.
Great. Thanks, Eric. What do you think?
I think just understanding where you are and identifying where technology can augment and start to build and enhance those efficiencies, that effectiveness, the awareness of your people, identify problems through enhanced senses. Having a realistic approach to it, understanding that technology isn't going to solve all of your problems. And if you have an inefficient process that you don't necessarily understand, technology is not going to solve that for you. So taking that approach is very
Great.
important.
Thank you. And Wade.
Yeah, I think understand that it is a process. Small wins, and several of those will equal an eventual big win. And don't hesitate to use your vendor and supply base as well.
Great. Well, I want to thank John, Eric, and Wade for your time this morning, getting up early and joining us at 7:30 on a Thursday. Appreciate that. And if anybody that's watching has any questions about Industry 4.0, I would encourage you to contact your local community college. We'd be happy to work with you and connect you with folks that can assist you in your Industry 4.0 journey. So again, thank you very much, John, Eric, and Wade, and I hope everybody has a great Thursday.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.